Well, a coalition of civil society organizations is calling on INEC to quicken the process of distributing voter cards and to ensure all missing PVCs are reissued. At a forum in Abuja, the groups called on government institutions like INEC, the Nigeria Police, and the judiciary not to allow the enthusiasm of the people for a credible process to be dampened.
As we approach the 2023 general election, the judiciary will definitely be in the eyes of the storm. As Nigerians are enthusiastic about the coming election, which is less than 50 days from today, a lot of Nigerians have expressed fears on the manipulations of the judiciary and the judicial system to make nonsense of the gains already made on the to sensitize the polity. Examples abound where judges give contrary court orders, injunctions, judgment that do not have precedence in judiciary jurisprudence. We have seen where court makes nonsense of people's mandate by declaring and installing people who were never voted for in an election, citing spurious reasons.
We are caught up in a web of time, because the election period is close. And I'm telling you, we don't have up to 10 to 20 to 30, if not 50% of the people that registered recently have not collected their PVCs. So how are we sure to enter into an election with people's PVC lying low somewhere? And for your information, there are some people's PVC that are already missing. Because many people have gone to collect their PVC, they can't find it. So a lot of these things are going to be put into consideration. INEC should expedite action on ensuring that people that are registered that their PVC are missing are either replaced, because in this coming election, like we said, it is a deciding election.
Absolutely. Well, joining us now is Cynthia Mbamalu, who is the program manager at civil society organization Yaga Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Still very much in order. It's still the first week of the new year. Well, I mean, listening to that report, hearing from INEC, whether in Rivers and some other states, that they're ready, 80% ready. Well, in some cases, you're hearing about missing, PVCs and all of that. What is your major concern, against the backdrop of what you're hearing? And what are you even finding out? I mean, you're part of the CSOs.
Yes, we're actually observing the process. And in Abuja, we're working with volunteers to support INEC's process at the ward level. And I think from the engagement today at the ward level and our observations so far, one, I'll just highlight three major concerns. The first is the challenge of getting PVCs to every validly registered voter. While we still have a large number of voters card, but we still have citizens not coming out in their numbers, not because they are not interested. There are different scenarios. One, while the INEC has evolved to the ward level, even within at the ward level, there's still a challenge of proximity for some locations, especially some places in the north where the distance to even a particular location is really high and people can't move around. Within Abuja metropolis, for instance, and when we went to not just Abuja, areas around Abaji, Kwali, we have issues around insecurity and Buhari, some of those communities. So we also have voters who, out of the insecurity, cannot get to the ward level to even get their PVC. So that is one major challenge, that we have people that may not. The other part is the management of the process. So issues around personnel and the capacity. Why? Because while we have a huge interest amongst especially young people to get their PVC. So if you see reports online, in some locations you see a lot of crowds. Some places are densely populated, but in some locations you see a lot of people waiting to collect that. And one of the things INEC needs to understand is you need to work with other groups to support this process. Because having 2 personnel, for instance, deployed to a ward is not sufficient. You need to have more than 2 persons, because the process of the PVC is quite cumbersome. You have to get the PVC, collate the data before you even give it out. So it's not a very, it's not such a simple process. If you have lesser personnel, processing time for one person will take a longer time. And the third for me is the issues around missing PVCs or the PVCs not even produced. We've gotten reports of voters who have gone, and some of them this evening we had a Twitter space. One young man said he's gone 8 times since 2021. He did a transfer 2021 and 2022, he went when the first batch of PVCs were produced. Until date, he went there today again. This PVC is still not ready. This is not just one. We've gotten other reports. So now it's important for INEC to respond to citizens. One, what is INEC's plan to reissue PVCs that are either missing or were not produced? Because we know that some PVCs were not printed. But one of the things we're observing is that it seems INEC does not have the accurate data on, okay, we produce 100 PVCs. We're yet to produce 50. These are the 50 to be produced. So we need the commission to listen to the people and ensure that every PVC is produced and issued to the voters, especially because the process would end on 22nd. One of the young men, they asked him to come in 2 weeks' time, and the other one, they asked him to come in 3 weeks' time. And he was saying, if it's in 3 weeks' time, it's almost 22nd. So does that mean he wouldn't get his PVC? And one in Nasarawa, we got reports people were asked to come after the election. So what is the use of registry if you get your PVC?
We call it campaign after election.
Especially because you need your PVC to vote. So INEC needs to respond to these issues and address them before it is second.
I mean, these are serious issues, and ignore the laughter because it's very serious.
Yep.
But Cynthia, it looks like a mixed bag, and I want you to break it down because on one hand, it sounds like INEC is overwhelmed, and we've heard the president say repeatedly, I have given funds, there's no excuse, they should be ready. On the other hand, these problems don't sound new. Problems of insecurity, problems of proximity. And I ask because we saw a lot of enthusiasm to go and register. But it doesn't look like we're seeing so much enthusiasm match registration as collection. Am I right or am I wrong? And what's going on?
What's setting in? Is it voter apathy or what?
Yeah. I think it's more around planning. I mean, this is not just an INEC issue, it's a general issue in Nigeria. A lot of times we take certain things for granted, and sometimes simple things are made complicated. So it's as simple as when you register people, you have their data, you have the centralized database of registered voters, and you know who is registered in each state, those who did transfer and replacement. Now, the process of printing and production is what I think printing, production, and disbursement or deployment to the state. I think that is where we're having a missing link. And INEC has a standard operating procedures to regulate this PVC process, but I think they're not implementing that. So for me, one of the things that INEC needs to do, because we can't cry over spilled milk, is one, you have a database of how many PVCs you received. So you know whose PVCs has been produced. Go back to that system. This is a simple thing. You just have a team who needs to impute every information on a simple, it could even be on an Excel sheet. And you can tell these are the numbers produced and these are the numbers remaining, the deficit per state. And then you focus on the deficit. How do we get them produced within the next couple of days? Because that simple system of accountability for me is what would address this issue. But honestly, INEC should also consider extending beyond 22nd.
I was going to ask you how realistic this window is.
Yes, the last thing we want is with the level of enthusiasm and how especially young Nigerians have a lot of interest in these elections, that individuals are disenfranchised for no cause of theirs. That is the last time. That for me would be a high injustice, because when voters are registered, they have the right to collect their PVCs so that they can vote. And we don't want people to be disenfranchised on technical grounds.
How long would be enough for an extension?
I mean, it could be extended to the end of the month. This is January. And why I say to the end of the month, because election is 25th of February. And INEC needs to collect the data for PVCs collected per polling unit. Because with the new electoral guideline, the margin of lead principle requires that in determining the conclusiveness of elections, if the margin of lead between the two leading party is less than the number of PVCs collected in polling units where votes were cancelled, then it means we need to go back to the polls. The elections will not be concluded. So unlike before where they were using registered voters, now to determine conclusiveness of election, if election is concluded, INEC would need to look at the data of PVCs collected in polling units where elections were cancelled. So which is why INEC needs to, before the election, have a complete and comprehensive database of PVCs collected per polling unit and make that public. Because it's also important for citizens oversight. We want to know, yes, we want to know what is the guiding, what is determining the determination on inconclusiveness or conclusiveness.
On the issue of people not picking up their PVCs, or whether it's a question of, dwindling dwindling enthusiasm, proximity, and all of that. How much of voter education are you seeing on the part of INEC and all stakeholders involved?
Very important. Voter education, and I actually should have mentioned that as a fourth issue, because we have citizens who do not even know that this process has now been decentralized to the ward level. And so there is still a major gap when it comes to voter education on the part of INEC, but not just INEC. I would call political parties here, because parties are the main immediate beneficiaries of votes. So we need parties conducting voter education now in line with their campaigns. Get your voters to go and get their PVCs, because if you don't get their PVCs, then you don't have votes. So I think for every political party who is serious to win an election, they should take voter education as a major priority. But INEC also needs to do a lot more, especially leveraging stakeholders' opportunities. So like the religious groups, religious institutions. Today was Friday. I mean, we should have messages in the mosque during prayer time, telling people go to your ward. On Sunday, we should have messages across churches,
like we did for registration.
we did for, and this will be ongoing during the weekends. So people can be told after church, you can just go to the ward level and get your PVC before you go home to eat your rice and stew.
One of the in our report there, one major issue that was put on the front burner is the role of the judiciary. Whether during the election, and of course, more importantly, post-election.
Very important. You know, when you said that, I just smiled. We were in a meeting and someone said the judiciary is possibly the major threat to our electoral process now, because now we're beginning to see elections that are won in the courts and not won by the votes of the people. And we do not want to see that repeated in the next general elections. And I'm hoping they would take a lead from the Supreme Court in Kenya, where within days, the decision on the presidential elections was delivered, and it just calmed the situation within days. We didn't need to wait that long. So while the law provides for 180 days for post-election litigation, election petition cases, I believe that the judiciary has an important role to play. One, in ensuring uniformity when it comes to their decisions, but also in limiting their personal inferences, or in using their personal inferences to determine the elections, or just even getting manipulated or bought over. At the end of the day, the votes of the people and the will of the people should be paramount in our democracy, and I think that is what is important. But maybe to also add that with the new Electoral Act, courts would cases that would go to court to be limited, because now the new Electoral Act provides that when results are declared, if it's not declared voluntarily, or if it's declared under duress, or not in line with the law, that INEC has 7 days to review that result. That way it reduces how everyone goes to court. What we had before, politicians just go get a result, and then they go to the court and buy their ways into elective offices, and we can't have that this election.
No, we can't.
So well, thank you very much, Cynthia. We hope to have you more regularly as we count down to the elections to educate the voters as well.
That's for sure.
Cynthia is from Yaga Africa. Well, thank you so much for the work you do and for coming on the news tonight.